It was the moment fans had waited for, but never thought they would see. After years of being pushed aside, ignored, and silenced, Meri finally stood tall in a courtroom, facing Kody with a strength that shook the entire Sister Wives world. The woman who had once been erased, the wife who was often dismissed and left out, had become the one holding the receipts, the one delivering the truth that could no longer be buried. This wasn't just another family argument. This was betrayal laid out in plain sight, secrets spilling into the open, and financial games that left jaws on the floor. The emotional abuse, the years of manipulation, the control that fans had witnessed for over a decade. Suddenly, it was no longer whispers or speculation. It was evidence. And for the first time, Kody couldn't hide behind charm, anger, or excuses. He was cornered by the very people who once stood beside him. Hi friends, I'm Sophia, and welcome back to TLC's Sister Wives world. If you've been following this journey, you know how heavy this story has been, but also how important it is to finally see the truth rise to the surface. Before we break down everything that happened in this emotional showdown, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear what side you're on, what you felt in those tense moments, and whether you think justice was finally served. Because what happened in that courtroom wasn't just about Meri. It was about every voice that had been silenced for far too long. For so long, Meri Brown's story was one of silence. From the early days of Sister Wives, you could see her slowly fade into the background while the rest of the family carried on. She was the first wife, the original partner, yet over the years it felt like her place in the family was erased in plain sight. Fans remember the pain on her face during family discussions, how her opinions were brushed aside, and how her marriage to Kody slowly unraveled before our eyes. We all remember the catfishing scandal, a desperate moment where Meri was reaching out for connection, for validation, for someone to simply see her. That was a turning point. Instead of support, she was shamed, and her mistakes became ammunition to keep her down. From then on, the storyline painted her as the outsider, the problem, the wife who no longer fit. Kody even said, on camera, that he didn't see their relationship as a marriage anymore. For anyone watching, it was heartbreaking. But what many didn't expect was how Meri would transform from that broken place into someone unshakable. When she walked into that courtroom, she wasn't the woman we'd seen shrinking into the background. She was standing firm, holding documents, and refusing to be silenced. Her voice was steady, her words deliberate. Years of being dismissed had built a quiet strength in her, and in that moment, it was finally unleashed. For fans, watching her take control felt like redemption. The woman who had been erased was suddenly undeniable. She wasn't just speaking for herself. She was speaking for every time she was gaslit, for every tear she cried when no one stood up for her, and for every moment the audience wanted to reach through the screen and say, "Meri, you deserve better." This transformation mattered because it wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. For Meri, standing her ground meant showing the world who she really was, resilient, determined, and unwilling to let Kody's narrative define her anymore. It was one of the most powerful shifts we've ever seen from her on Sister Wives, and it set the tone for everything that came next. If Meri's transformation was the shock of strength, then Christine's testimony was the emotional punch that left everyone speechless. For years, fans had watched Christine struggle with Kody's dismissiveness, so when Christine sat in that courtroom, she carried all of that history with her. Her voice cracked as she spoke about the emotional abuse, about years of feeling invisible, about the constant power imbalance in the marriage. Fans who had watched her tears on the show knew this wasn't exaggeration. This was Christine's truth. And in front of a judge, in front of Kody, those words became evidence. Christine's testimony cut deeper because it wasn't just about her. She spoke for every wife who felt she had to earn love by sacrificing her happiness. She described how her confidence was chipped away, how she doubted her worth, and how Kody's favoritism toward Robyn created a home that felt toxic and unsafe. She laid out how emotional neglect is just as damaging as financial betrayal, and for the first time, The weight of her story couldn't be brushed off. What stood out most was Christine's courage. She admitted the pain. She admitted the humiliation of begging for affection that never came. And instead of hiding from those raw moments, she put them on the record. It was a reminder of why viewers had cheered her on when she packed up, left Flagstaff, and built a new life on her own terms. For the court, Christine's testimony was a blow to Kody's credibility. For fans, it was validation. We had seen her tears, we had heard her struggles, but here was Christine herself putting it all together in a way that no one could deny. And that moment was huge, because once Christine spoke, it became clear that this wasn't just Meri's fight anymore. This was a collective reckoning, and Christine made sure her voice carried the pain of every season, every confession, and every broken promise. If Christine brought the heart, Janelle brought the hammer. Where Meri's strength and Christine's emotions shook the room, Janelle walked in with something Kody couldn't argue against: hard evidence. See. Fans know Janelle has always been the practical one. While the other wives often got tangled in emotional disputes, Janelle kept her focus on stability, money, and long-term planning. She was the one handling bills, managing budgets, and constantly reminding Kody that dreams meant nothing without resources to back them up. On Sister Wives, we watched her battle with Kody over finances again and again. Remember the land on Coyote Pass? Janelle pushed for progress, while Kody stalled, diverted funds, and left promises hanging. Over time, it became clear that money was being funneled in ways that didn't benefit all the wives equally. Janelle was the one who noticed the gaps, the inconsistencies, the numbers that didn't add up. So when she stepped up in court, she came armed with documents, statements, and receipts that told a story no one could deny. Calm and direct, Janelle laid out patterns that pointed to financial favoritism, unexplained spending, and missing funds. Unlike Christine's emotional testimony, Janelle didn't need to raise her voice. The numbers spoke for themselves. What made this so powerful was how it cut through Kody's usual defense. For years, he could dismiss emotions as overreactions. He could gaslight the wives into thinking they were too sensitive. But when Janelle showed where the money went, how properties were split, and how decisions were made without transparency, there was no emotional spin that could erase it. It was written down, black and white, undeniable. Fans who have followed Janelle's story weren't surprised. She's always been the one to stand on her own 2 feet, the one who refused to let Kody control her choices. But seeing her use that independence to back Meri in court was a turning point. It showed solidarity, but more importantly, it showed accountability. For viewers, this was satisfying on another level. Because while we've all seen Kody brush off tears, we've never seen him successfully brush off math. And in that courtroom, every financial receipt Janelle revealed chipped away at his credibility until there was nowhere left to hide. For over a decade, Robyn has been Kody's most loyal supporter. From the moment she entered the family, her bond with him was different, stronger, and often painful for the other wives to witness. On the show, we've seen how Kody's attention shifted toward her, how she became the emotional anchor he leaned on, and how her presence deepened the fractures in the family. She was the defender, the peacemaker, the one who always found a way to explain his behavior. But in that courtroom, something shifted. The weight of the testimonies before her, Meri's strength, Christine's raw pain, Janelle's financial proof, left Robyn in a place she wasn't prepared for. Fans have seen her cry on camera many times, often breaking down when the family tensions grew too heavy. Yet this time, the tears weren't simply sympathy or frustration. These tears carried fear. When Robyn was pressed for answers, her usual confidence cracked. She hesitated. She stumbled. At moments, she sat in silence, her eyes filling before words could come. For years, she had been the shield for Kody, absorbing the blows, excusing his actions. But here, with evidence on the table and witnesses laying out story after story, her loyalty wasn't enough. The truth was too heavy to cover. And what happened next stunned everyone. Instead of defending Kody the way she always had, Robyn admitted pieces of the truth. She didn't shout, she didn't argue, but in her quiet admissions, The foundation of Kody's defense started to crumble. The woman who had been his strongest ally was now, unintentionally, exposing the very weaknesses he wanted to hide. For fans, this moment was jaw-dropping. After years of being painted as Kody's favorite, the wife who won, Robyn's breakdown made her human in a way the show rarely allowed. It showed the cost of carrying someone else's lies, the toll of protecting a man who couldn't protect his own family. Robyn's collapse didn't just hurt Kody's defense. It shifted the entire energy of the courtroom. Suddenly, it wasn't 4 women against him. It was Kody, alone, while the women, even Robyn, stood on the side of truth. If there was one voice that no one in that courtroom could ignore, it was Leon's. Over the years on Sister Wives, we've watched them grow up inside this family dynamic, carrying the burden of being Meri's only child while still trying to carve out their own identity. Fans remember how Leon spoke openly about their struggles, how honesty has always been their way of surviving the complicated legacy Kody created. So when Leon took the stand, the energy shifted instantly. This wasn't a wife recounting betrayal or a co-parent exposing financial deceit. This was a child, now an adult, holding their father accountable in a way that cut deeper than any bank statement or testimony ever could. Leon spoke from experience. They described what it was like growing up in a house where favoritism was impossible to ignore. They remembered watching their mother shrink in Kody's shadow, dismissed and devalued, and how it shaped their view of love and family. Fans know Leon has never been afraid to call things as they see them, and in that courtroom, the truth came out raw and unfiltered. The words weren't shouted. They didn't need to be. Every sentence carried the weight of years of silence finally broken. And as Leon spoke, Kody, the man who once commanded so much authority over this family, seemed smaller, cornered by truths he couldn't explain away. For a man who prided himself on control, there was no controlling his child's voice. For viewers who have followed this family for more than a decade, this moment was devastating but necessary. It wasn't about legal strategies or technicalities anymore. It was about lived reality. It was about a child saying, "This is what you did to us. This is what you did to me." What made Leon's testimony so powerful wasn't just the personal pain. It was the undeniable authenticity. Unlike Kody, who often spun narratives on the show to maintain his image, Leon had nothing to gain. They weren't protecting anyone. They were speaking their truth for themselves, for their mother, and for every sibling who felt the weight of Kody's decisions. By the time Leon stepped down, the courtroom was silent. The power had shifted completely. Kody wasn't the head of a plural family anymore. He was a man stripped of authority, left to face the reality that even his own child no longer stood with him. Just when it felt like everything had been said, when the courtroom seemed ready to exhale after the accountant's cold facts, something unexpected happened. Leon, who had already delivered some of the most emotional testimony of the day, stood again. It wasn't planned. It wasn't scripted. You could feel the tension rise immediately because everyone knew if Leon had one more thing to say, it mattered. Fans of Sister Wives know Leon doesn't speak just to fill silence. When they talk, it's direct, it's raw, and it carries weight. So when Leon asked the judge for permission to pose one final question, the entire room froze. Even Kody, who had spent years brushing off the voices of his wives and children, leaned forward, suddenly uneasy. We don't hear the exact words. That's where the episode, the coverage, the storyline cuts us off. But we see the look on Kody's face, pale, tense, almost defensive before the question even leaves Leon's mouth. That single image told fans everything. Whatever Leon was about to ask wasn't just personal. It was going to cut to the core of everything Kody had tried to hide. It could have been about the finances. It could have been about the way the family was split. It could have been about Robyn, or about a moment in childhood that Leon had carried in silence until now. The mystery of that unspoken question became bigger than the courtroom itself, and that's the brilliance of where this moment lands. After hours of heartbreak, confession, numbers, and collapse, we end not with closure, but with suspense. Viewers are left asking, What did Leon want to reveal? What secret could shake Kody even further? It's the kind of cliffhanger that makes reality TV unforgettable. Not because it's staged, but because it's real. It's messy, unresolved, and human. For over a decade, this family has played out their lives in front of cameras, and now, in this courtroom, the stakes are higher than ever. As the scene fades, all we know is this: Kody Brown is no longer in control. His wives have spoken, his child has spoken, and the facts have spoken. The only question left, the one hanging in the air, waiting to drop, is whether justice will finally speak too.